Hello and welcome to the Dirt After Party. Joining us today for a course of the Muckle Yin. It's going to be segment points similar to ZRL, but just between the Dirt teams, running two separate categories here today. We've got the Shield with the Dragons, the Hippos, the Kraken, the Orcas, Tiger Sharks and Badgers, and the Cup featuring the Behemoths, Dingoes, Goats, Hellhounds, Mammoths, Roosters and Alligators. So you're going to be in for a treat. We've got the Shield riders starting in the B pen, the Cup riders starting in the A pen, and a neutralised start allegedly until the Champion Sprint banner, which is nice and early on in this race. For those who aren't aware, the people who are allowed to take part are the dirt riders who have represented these teams in the past 2 seasons, so that's leaving a bit of room for some interesting rides. We might have a sneaky A+ hiding away in there with the new system, a certain Kiwi who may be one of the favourites. And looking at the other favourites, we've always got Clem there and thereabouts. Whether he turns up or whether he's too busy using his sticky watts is going to be the real question today. There's also Joey and Paul, both with monster 1-minute efforts. Especially on this course, you might see a very long attack from either the Clyde kicker or from the little bump, maybe about 400 metres out. Just a little go up there, breaking away, long into the finish could be the winning move. Then we've also got Ali with his monster sprint. I think he's riding with the Roosters, so who knows what will happen with their team tactics. I think they've only got 4 riders, so we could see something a bit interesting there. We've got Swanee, former winner. Snowy, who's out to get his first ever win, a perpetual rider of the Dirty Beast. So for those watching, I've just seen the advert for the Dirt Racing series starting mid-April. Strongly recommend getting signed up using the new Zwift ranking system with a variety of categories, fairer racing. Something set up by Tim, who'd strongly recommend getting involved, trying it out. And it's a far better point structure than previous races, including today, as much as Goose may kill me for saying that. So, getting back into the screen, seeing what's happened. We're going to jump on quite early to start. Should be able to see the different pens. Not quite sure where we're going to have the B pen with the Shield Riders starting. Can't quite spot them. It looks like they might just be directly across in front. So they have a little bit of a lead out over the A pen here. But you can see in the bottom left hand corner the course map. Does miss off. We've got a little bit of a downhill into Champion Sprint, which again I've said before, it's going to be a neutralised start hopefully. Although I'm sure there'll be a pesky dingo attack at some point. And that's going to be at 2.5 to 3 watts per kilo for the start. After the start, we have a kind of a gentle plod through the course, just around the crit circuit to begin with, and then off into the Highlands of Scotland with the Breakaway Bray reverse, which being the first real point segment. But before that, we'll have the long incline up to where the start-finish banner is for some of the courses, but not there today. Down in the Castle Kicker, which should separate a couple of the riders out. Though it depends whether we have any long attacks. It's a bit risky from there, but it's definitely manageable. Into the Breakaway Bray reverse, it's a much shorter effort. Have seen breakaways hold off there, but you'll take a couple of stronger heavy riders, the likes of Marshall and Swanee, to possibly make that happen. And then we're into the actual scum itself. Can't quite see it marked on here for the first one, but that's on the gravel climb. So heading off now. We see nice gentle start as everyone gets back together. See some of the dingoes doing dingo things. Just starting to chase down that B group. Yeah, no points on offer on this first sprint segment, so no need for people to be pushing crazy hard here. See the gap. A lovely view of Glasgow, missing all the significant potholes. See Magnus here is possibly having a little drop out. Not sure what's going on there. Hopefully he's okay. Start a little thunderstorm here. So as the A's getting back, I'm just going to say the A's. The A pen, shall we say, is going to get a bit tighter, a bit spicier. As people are jumping across Joey from the Hellhounds, just making sure that gap's closed. We've already got someone dropping back a little bit. Let's see who that is. Looks like Rob Bain just dropping back. Swifty Swifter on YouTube. Go check him out if you have a chance. Through this first part, we're just going to be conserving their legs a bit. Not doing too much work. Just going back to the field as we were talking about just before we got started. Before our DRS advert. There's going to be an interesting tactic at the finish. It is a downhill sprint, and as such, it favours raw watts and strong 15-second power. But because of the little kicker before, it's usually won by a bit of a breakaway. So might be seeing some of those stronger 1 minute guys, especially the likes of Jason, Joey, Paul, going for a long attack there. Personally, if I see one of those long attacks going, you want to be jumping on that wheel, and whoever manages to grab their wheel but not be out the front in the wind could easily be the winner. If it does become a real sprint fest at the end, it's about who gets up to speed early. With that downhill, as soon as you're up to speed, you're not going to be slowing much, so hitting that high top speed and flying through the group is the key. There's not going to be much changing even because of the draft there. See one of the Hellhounds, I presume, attacking off the front. In fact, I lied, it's the Dingoes. The Dingoes in their level 20 kit. Chris from the Goats covering the attacks. Very early attack to be going here, but we have got a good couple of kilometres, so you can see on the minimap up to the banner at the top of uphill and false flat climbing. So if you can get a good lead there, you might just about hold off the pack on the way to the downhill. We are with draft, well, should we call it Pack Dynamics 3, so everyone can super tuck here today, so there isn't a huge benefit to doing solo attacks just before a downhill, but you never know, especially with kind of courses like this, and with such experienced riders, no one wants to be the one putting out hard work chasing, so quite often, as we've seen in previous after parties with the likes of Billy, Swanee and Marshall, all having successful breakaways, albeit Swanee using Billy's wheel to come through and steal the crown. So for those who aren't aware, there's an interesting scoring system for this. First up we have the crown, so that's going to be for the winner. From any of the two pens, the overall winner of the race will get a crown in the name for the rest of time on the Discord. And the second scoring is a mixture of two systems. We have the normal points scoring categories per team, so it's just going to be FAL, FTS and finish points, and then there's also an average time per team. So take the average time of all the finishers in the team. So if you have someone dropping off the back early, as we can see someone just edging towards the back now, it's a bit nerve-wracking for them. That can really cost your team. Just see him just accelerating back on nicely. That'll be one of the big factors, and both of them are scored individually, so that you take the average time of the team members, and that's ranked 1 to 20, and then you take the points scored overall, and that's not per rider, that's overall for the team, so the teams who can get more riders out will definitely have a benefit. And then they're both ranked 1 to 20, and it's the overall highest score that wins. So just coming through the banner, people want to be a bit cautious. This break hasn't really gone anywhere. You see a couple of people working either from the Tiger Sharks jumping across. Seems a bit of a waste of energy at this point. This group's clearly going to catch on again. Marshall also wasting energy, which is very surprising for a guy of his experience. But this isn't going to go anywhere, it's not going to take away. I know there's a little bit of a gap, but coming into the castle climb, it's all about momentum. And in a group, your momentum's so much higher. When you hit the base, you want to be in the draft for as long as possible, and you can fly through the group. If you're in a bigger group, you can probably get away with 5 watts per kilo, while those on the front are doing 8, which really speaks volume, especially for those heavier riders, the likes of Swanee, Marshall, Snowy, Chris, a lot of those goats. So again, it's going to be important for anyone here if they can try and get into Super Truck. I know they've got quite fresh legs now, but every little helps. And everyone knows the ultimate battle here is for the lowest watt per kilos over the course. Looking at the strong teams, it's going to be another big competition between hellhounds and behemoths and goats. All have been up there and favourites throughout the season, and with 2 of them winning the ZRL championships for each of their divisions, the EMEA East and the EMEA West. So big competition right there between the 2 teams. So there's lots of other great individual riders out and in between. I'm sure Roosters will be trying to prove a point after maybe not their best season, but definitely better showing than some of the previous ones. So here we go into Castle Climb. No points here, but again, it's a place to do a bit of damage. If I'm on those teams, I'd try and be just resting up here. You don't need to do too much to stick in. See the dingoes just pushing the pace on the front. You can hear my surprise in that. So unlike them. Again, every little just bit of work, especially if you can rotate between the teams, means that people behind you are going to be doing more and more. You just don't want to be the one who's constantly pushing it out, making others do work, but knackering yourself. See Giles from the Badgers off the back, which is sad to see, and Bob from the Orcas, which will be a real disappointment for them. But a very strong showing this season, with Dave Husband, taking a big lead in that, scoring a lot of points in the final race. A real good performance across the team. James Scarr pushing on well, really approaching the A boundary, which is fantastic. Hopefully he'll get across it soon. So here we go, we're going into the first segment of the race. First scoring segment at least. I'm not sure if there aren't meant to be power-ups, we all know Zwift. So from here it's a constant uphill, but with FTS to play, you'll see people are dropping towards the back. And they're going to start sending it now. Snowy's off the front early, putting a real solid effort. A lot of the goats up there with Swanee following behind. And Magnus from the Dingoes trying to keep up with them, but some big points here from the goats. And while they haven't started very far back, there should be a lot of FTS points there. Once we hit here, it's quite flat. There are a few riders coming through. See Paul from the Hellhounds coming through a few of the goats in the Beast Mode kit. But it's very flat for the majority of that top, so there isn't going to be much change at the front. As Swanee motors through to take first, followed by Snowy and Marshall. Jason for the Behemoths in fourth even. We see some of the Hellhounds coming through. Paul and Joey constantly up there, both freshly returned. So on this down, so quite a few of the riders strung out the back. And just see who's managed to hold on through here. See Eamon dropping for the Behemoths, so that'll be a real big loss if you can't make it back on here. And Parky for the Dingoes, Craig for the Alligators. So a loss here quite early on in the course is going to be very harmful for teams' average time. And average time strongly comes into play in this event, because a lot of teams are very close within 1 or 2 points. And some teams just target that, just sit in for the segments and target that to come really high up. You see there Swanee took the FTS for that segment. As we go through a few more flats, as you can see on the mini-map, before we get to the gravel climb. What might be interesting to see is on the gravel climb, if there are any riders left in this front group on gravel bikes. It's definitely an interesting tactic. Probably takes more than one rider to make it work. There's this little chase group forming, but again, they're not working. They got dropped because they're knackered, very understandably. So it's going to be a long way back if they're trying to push on. Moving back to the front, we see it's a nice slow pace. Everyone trying to sit in the back, do as little as possible. Although a very disappointing 3.5 from Snowy there. Hope to see a lot better. There we go, back down. Much better. See Hatch there, having a really strong season and having a fantastic performance in the farms of the TTT. I think something really has to be said for how well the Behemoths dealt with going down to 4 riders at the end, but big shifts put in throughout. They had a really strong plan, executed it to perfection, and it takes a lot of mental strength to dig through when you go down to 4 riders with a good lap and a bit to go of a course like that. See, there's still quite a few of the Penby riders left in the front group. You might see them getting shaken out the back a bit more on the next climb. The Squirrell is a pretty brutal one. It does get steeper and steeper and steeper, and it's very easy to do too much work in the lower sections. At the end, you see it's about 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half of hard effort of pure inclines, but there's a couple of kicks just beforehand that can drop riders if you're not careful. Ideally, through the start of it, you're on this direction, you want to be quite relaxed, not doing too much work, not forcing your way to the front. In the opposite direction, though, it's a whole different game. It's a very sharp kick to begin with, and if you can hold momentum through there, you're gone for the rest of the climb. So as you see, one of the Dragons pushing away solo here. It's very ambitious, but they might be trying a bike swap here. Interestingly, nobody's trying to chase down. You see, hopefully one of their opposition in the B pen might be giving it a go, possibly the Tiger Sharks or the Hippos, but he seems to have made it away. So it's going to be a very interesting tactic here. It could just be an effort to get a bit of room going into this climb, and it's an admirable one at that. You see James Scar, very strong rider for the Orcas, just chasing him down, closing that gap. Maybe he's been made aware of that. It looks like Jathan Dragons is carrying on pushing, so it is just an effort to get a bit of head start over the group. The problem with that on a course like this is look at the group, looking at 20, 30 riders at least there, coming through with lots of momentum. Some of them can do 4.5 while you're doing 5 up a climb like this and just move through because of all that draft. So if you're going to do that, might have been a better attempt to do it a bit early in the race, but worth trying something interesting, especially in a course and race like this, where everyone's very tentative, no one wants to do too much work. See Chris here moving up for the goats, and Jason Robinson, as expected, one of the A-pluses and the new system, having pushed on fantastically after his rides in Season 8, in Round 8 shall we call it now, with their new naming convention. But he's grinding away here. It's going to be interesting to see with his 4.7 20 minute, whether he wants to try and blow up the field, or just sit in and wait for the finish. He's got a very strong sprint, and obviously very strong 20 minute, 5 minute numbers, so the world is his oyster today. So whether he can get his tactics right. If I was him here, I'd be pushing the pace a little bit, not doing too much work, but enough just to tire out your competitors. It's a long way to the finish, which means plenty of time to recover. See Chris from the Goats pushing the pace hard here. You see this 13% section, see already red numbers, lots of sensible riders knowing that when it gets up to those percentages, you've got to kick up it, especially something so short. See there's a lot of gain made on Chris there at the front. That's one of the downsides of attacking on this climb before it gets consistent uphills, which we're about to go into here. So because of the group, they have so much pace. So the only place to really attack, unless you're far, far greater than everyone else, is here. Through this section is where we're going to see it start really spreading out. The draft drops down, you're at 20 kilometers an hour, probably less for those guys dropping off the back. This is where it's make or break for some riders. There's a long way to go. And stronger teams like the Goats, like the Hellhounds, might be wanting to push the pace here to try and drop other riders from their competitors and ensure they have the top average time. Taking a look back at some interesting tactics. Looks like Parky's here on a gravel bike, doing some work, but 4 watts per kilo even on a gravel bike, he's probably not going to be doing enough to catch back up with the leaders. He certainly made some ground though, which is great to see. It's just a different tactic, making it interesting. Again, these leaders doing 6 watts per kilo, some 7 as we come in towards the line. See Kai trying to close down the gap to Chris. Chris has done very well, but little Little blow there for Watts per kilo for a few seconds. Sadly, that's cost him as everyone's flying through on the line. Plus side, he's going to stay with the front group. He's going to keep in touch, and that's very important. But going to be no points from on the segment there as Snowy comes through to take the points. Again, big showing for the Behemoths there. Don't want to call them the Hippos too much, as they're normally known, as we do have the Hippos riding in the B pen, with Kai leading the way there. Dave H, as we mentioned before, for the Orcas, doing very well. And T. Vander Tommy coming through. So that's going to be a strong showing for the Orcas if they've got two, if not more, in that front group. And Rob Bain as well, hiding his way for the Tiger Sharks, along with Muckle Yin. So it's going to be very tight in this plate competition, which is good to see. A little bit of a gap that's opened up here. Interesting to see a couple of top riders in the back there, so I don't think it's going to get away with Chris Swanee, Hatch. Oh, and James Scarsati dropped off the back for the Orcas, so that's going to cost him a little bit, but out of all the rest, he's had a lot of those riders in the A pen. A couple of the Dingoes who might be trying stuff. Some strong riders though, ebbing off the back, which is going to be harmful for the Hellhounds. You see Eamon off the back as well, so it looks like the Goats are definitely going to be leading the way at the moment. Big points on both segments, Snowy doing very well. And more importantly, all their riders still in the front group from the looks of things. Looks like one of the Tiger Sharks is taking a bit of a lead at the front. We're heading into the long downhill again. So again, kind of a bit pointless to put too much effort in here. It might just be a case you just surge through the group. I see the rest of the group chasing down at their solid 1 watt per kilo. Huge chase coming from them. Most likely taking advantage from a few 100 kilo plus members. Certainly beneficial. See, everyone's just resting up now. Not quite up to super tuck speeds. It's a bit of an awkward climb for that, just sitting at -3% and dropping down to -1 on some of the flatter sections. So you only just get into it as you're dropping into the castle, which will be coming through again at the bottom. And then we're going to be going through the breakaway bray forward direction, which most of you will know well by now. Done it plenty of times in the ZRL. I've used and abused the Scotland course the past few weeks. Saying that, I'd much rather they do that than going back to Titan's Reverse. I think we've all seen enough of Titan's Reserve. Hope it's kept in reserve. Titan's Reverse for the rest of the year, season, lives. It's a horrid 1.5 minute climb. Or 1:10 for the likes of Jason, Paul, etc. You see there's still a good distribution of riders in the front group. 4 Hellhounds, 4 Behemoths, 3 Tiger Sharks, which is really good for the plate team. And it looks to be 5 of the Goats. Hard to tell. As we come into the castle climb, see riders kicking up, but nowhere near as aggressively as last time. Again, looking 9s on the front, 8s on the front, but they're not going anywhere, they're not making any ground. Hellhounds pushing with Paul and Hendrik. But then you saw riders at the back, they're just sitting in at 6 watts per kilo. So it's a big difference pushing 9 watts per kilo versus 6 on a section like that, especially with a segment coming up soon. I really recommend riders just sit in the back there, don't do too much. Have confidence. Especially punchy rides, if you really had to, you could kick it up again on that flat section and get back on with speeds being, not even up to 40 yet. There's plenty of time to make it back on if you get it wrong. Although saying that, if you're down at 1 watt per kilo and it starts to go uphill, you're probably going backwards quickly. Just taking a look at some of the chase groups. They all seem to be working relatively well together, not trying to drop each other. It's important for a lot of these riders just to have a group, as it will give them much quicker speeds for the rest of the course, improving that average speed and gaining them places. It becomes a very tactical race towards the end though when you're in one of these small groups, as an early breakaway can be very mentally draining on the rest of the riders around them. And people don't necessarily want to chase 5 minutes out from the finish. even if the person's only doing 3.5, 4 watts per kilo, which is very manageable for all these riders here. So we're going to come into the start of the segment just after this left turn. We have a little right bend which dips down. Riders will want to stick towards the back. Ensure that they're getting the fastest FTS time. You see Snowy just hanging out towards the back. Dave H also just hang towards the back, making sure they can maximise their FTS time and have the benefit of the draft through this flat first section. So again, no one's really pushing too hard too early here. See a couple of behemoths just sitting in, one at the front, but it's going to be this bend where it all starts to spice up for the segment. Start to see some 8s as we turn the next left part of it, and there we go. A couple of the goats really sending it. Again, it doesn't seem to be that crazily broken up at the front, so again you just can recompose a little bit here. See Joey going very hard here, he's going to try and break off the front. Jason's grabbing his wheel. Again, riders need to think at this point of conserving and thinking about how many segments we have in play today. So you could have sat up a little bit there, then punched through towards the top, holding that speed. You see a couple of riders from the goats there coming through from deep, having not done crazy numbers but still getting points. Good points there for Jason and Joey off the front. Pete scoring well, he's really pushed on this past 2 rounds. Starting to get a lot more points for the Behemoths, which really helped them in their division, especially against punchy teams like Watt per kg. So coming down from here, we get the lovely joys of another push over that castle climb in reverse this time. It's a bit of an interesting one. It's a sharp kick at the beginning and then very flat for a while. There's a couple of races like tiny races where we've had that at the finish. It does make for an interesting course because there's just enough time if you can hold wheels to manage to come back through rides who blow up at the top. But again, it is about that early push here. So anyone towards the front is going to struggle a little bit. They're not up to speed. So looking at this group now, we didn't drop anybody there. It's a very strong bunch of riders, and we'll probably keep most of them to the finish now. Look like 23-ish on the front group. Unless someone does something crazy up the next go on the reverse sker, I'll be very surprised if we lose riders off the back. See Kai pushing the pace a little bit here, but yeah, it's doing nothing. No one needs to chase on. There is a few more, well, I don't say bumps, it's a long climb coming up after this before we hit the sker itself on the south side. So, you know, it's possible for someone to go long, get away there, but realistically they'd need a big gap over the group because it's a very punchy climb. See Kai carrying on, 2 watts per kilo. I'm not sure if this is going to be a serious attack. He's just getting some rest here, especially with it being such steep downhill. He might go for a cheeky super tuck. He's got a few seconds. UCI wouldn't like him, but it is what it is. And now he's pushing out the bottom, so it looks like he is going to go for this. It's an interesting tactic, especially as no one's going to want to do too much work here with the segment coming up. It's going to be interesting to see if anyone dares chase. See Ollie trying to jump down on that with a big kick, doing exactly as you should. At this point, unless you're working for your team, trying to get your team across, if you're going to bridge that gap, you want to do it really hard, really aggressively, and then sit in. Because once he's here, he can start to relax off, as he does absolutely perfectly, and just sit behind Kai's wheel. Yeah, puts Kai in an awkward position. He's made the breakaway, but he's expended a lot of energy. Whereas, you know, Ollie's worked hard, he's put in a punch, but he's going to be able to recover. And it's in Kai's hands whether this breakaway succeeds or fails now. So he gives a little burst. The best way to avoid that is kicking again. As soon as they slow back down to get on your wheel, wait for their momentum to halt. As soon as they stop moving forwards relative to you, they'll be, you know, resting up in your wheel, and then just kick again and make them chase on for a second time. There's a chance they'll hold it, but, you know, it's not a disadvantage. You're trying to break away, so punching hard isn't going to hurt you. And there's a good chance you might drop the rider trying to grab your wheel as well. As we go, there's a little bit of a gap. See Joey for the Hellhounds, no representative in that front group, pushing towards the front. A couple of goats watching the front. Saw Jason there for a few seconds. Again, people are just going to keep an eye on what's going on. Lots of people want to see who's actually up the road, especially if there aren't many comms going on. And speaking of which, we might have a quick jump into the goats chat, see what they're saying about this, see how they're thinking. going into the climb. Sounds like you're having fun, guys.
So much fun. Never had more fun.
Is anyone going to bother chasing down the breakaway, or are you going to wait till they get to the climb? Just sitting in.
I don't know. It's not going to be me.
Yeah. Interesting to see Jason not doing too much work on the front. Are you expecting him to kind of try and punch off on the next climb or anything?
Just come out of the top.
Yeah. Good luck, guys. Make sure to punch up the first section here. I'll see you on the other side.
See you, David.
Sadly, no horse noises from Rob there. Putting in a big shift. So as we come into the base of the climb, we've got a 10-second lead there. It's important to note, just looking for the FTS, but as we come into the start here, you'll see it's 8-9%. Ollie's doing exactly what you should. You've really got to kick into here and maintain your speed. If you don't, it's very easy to get dropped. See, very slow entry from a lot of riders here. They just left it a bit too late for getting there. There is a bit of a delay on Zwift. So even Snowy just up at 6 there. They're not going to catch much on them at this rate. And if I was there, I'd really have been kicking into the base there. You might not close the entire gap, but you're going to break up the field. You know, if you let your team know in advance, go together, could have been a devastating move for a team. And Ollie's just maintaining a strong pace here. It's very tiring through this section, but it's only 1, 2, 3%, so you can get some rest after that punch before you have to kick up again. You want to put one little dig in here, rest up one more time, and then you'll be able to see it gets very steep into the finish for another 30 seconds or so. But the long breakaway here is definitely a good move. Maybe not all the way that they've gone, but just from the base there on that first climb, it's seen regularly pulled off to a good success. The group here is no one's really leading it out. No one seems willing to do the chase work. There is a long way to go to the finish, but it's not a crazy distance and it's not insurmountable for these two. It's a good chance on the downhill they'll be able to stay away, especially at the pace they're pushing here. No one's wanting to chase. I'd very much be shouting out to teams now. This is where it's going to be won or lost for these two. If you guys can push hard over the top here, get some good speed into the downhill, you'll be able to grab back on. Again, you've got to be aware that people are doing. Seen a couple of riders dropped off the back here. Hatch has finally gone for bear moths. It's like the chase group's about a minute away from him, which is going to be a tough solo TT to the finish for Hatch. You see Ian getting dropped for the Hellhound. Swanee, a big loss there for the bear moths, and one of the favourites pre-race already got his crown. So it's very sad to see as you saw everyone sprinting through there. Sorry I missed it. Didn't quite get back in time. See if we can get some results, but Zwift Power's Swift Power, so who knows. You see Marshall and Pete leading a bit of a charge here. It's down to 8 seconds on the gap. This is the problem with the group sprinting through the banner. They've built up a lot of speed. With it being a dirt downhill, you want to be carrying high speed throughout, working on the sections that are flat, super tucking when you can. And that high downhill speed of the group will make a difference, more so than on the road. As you'll have riders who will punch these in between sections and carry that speed. See Iron for the Roosters pushing hard, trying to close it down. Orca's chasing as well with Tom, knowing that he's got one of the hippos up the road in the form of Kai, one of his opposition. Dave H still with him, a couple of Tiger Sharks. So if they can close him down, they're definitely going to be one of the favourites. And there's going to be good points there for Kai and Ollie, possibly FTS through the segment, given it looked like a 12-13 second gap over the top. And they started at 10-11. So in classic fashion, Zwift Power isn't working for this race. They did have timings wrong, so it may not be too surprising. So you see the group just absolutely monstering through, carrying all that speed. Just nothing they can do about it. It's good work for those two to take the second points, but they're going to be absolutely knackered going into the finish now. Probably looking about 4 kilometers to go, maybe 3. Going to start to turn onto the crit course soon. Down to a bit of a smaller group, but still strong. See, 3 tiger sharks in fact in the front group. Could very well help again with the average time in play. Depends where their other riders are out the back. An early drop really costs teams in the overall standings, getting further back without the benefit of the group, because the group speed is just so much quicker even now. And even on a bumpy course like this, dropping tons of time if you're not in one, even if it's just a 5-man group out the back. See some of these smaller ones up the road. Looking at this lead group coming towards the Clyde kicker, there's another opportunity for a long breakaway. Seem to have lost Swanee, so for a long breakaway we're looking at the likes of Marshall, maybe Jason to go for it. And then when we get closer to the line, look at the Hellhounds with Paul and Joey, very strong rides over a minute, do the damage, and the closer and closer you get to the line, the more it's going to turn into the Goat's favour for a sprint finish. See Marshall pushing away, as expected, going for that long breakaway. Rob Baines trying to jump in his wheel, Jason just watching it, but no one's doing enough to chase this down. If Marshall can kick hard up this climb, he's good chance. See, there we go. Pete pushing very hard. Ollie, so the Bear Moths are really going for it. Paul from the Hellhounds watching them. Marshall's not going to stay away here. He's not going to gain enough time, I don't think. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. But I think those chase packs just a little bit too close, 2 to 3 seconds. So you need about 8 seconds when we get into the finish section, which isn't far to go now. You can see the finish line on the mini-map. See Ollie just holding that gap. Again, Marshall's got a punch up here if he's wanted to, but it looks like he's probably bailing out now. He's done hard work, he's gained points, but he needs to recover for the finish. See Ollie pushing hard, trying to bridge across, Jason on his wheel. Wonder if there's going to be some sneaky tactics from the two of them. Possibly a lead-out train between Ollie and Jason. Especially with Jason not necessarily contesting for the crown himself, allegedly. He does love to come second, and there we go. It is. It's going to be a 2-man move here from Ollie and Jason trying to break away. I hope they might have gone with Marshall if they'd spotted it, but they might not have had the comms on or gone early enough to get with him. In 2 seconds, 3 seconds, it's going to be a tough ask for them here. The Hellhounds, I suspect, will be charging hard when we get into the bottom of here. Chasing this down, Ollie's getting a little super tuck in as Jason leads him. Again, you still have to work hard here. He just got a bit deeper, you see, at 7 meters. Not quite getting the full benefit of the draft. You enter this 3% section. Now looking back at the group, you have Tommy Mullins pushing hard. Again, no one's quite gone for it yet. This is where we need the kick. Ollie's going hard. This is Ollie sending it to the line now. Whereas in the group, we've got Joey. Joey's starting to go. Might be a little bit too late, though. He didn't quite get the numbers up high enough. See Rob Bain going. I think Ollie's going to take this here. People aren't quite gaining enough. Oh, no. Oh. And he seems to have blown a gasket there. Down to 4 watts per kilo. He might not hold off. Rob Baines pushing very hard. Possibly for the plate win. Will Ollie keep it away here? A kick now from him would seal the deal. Does he have it in the bag? It's going to be very tight on the line. We see Joey coming through hot for the Hellhounds, really chasing down as we approach the line. It's going to be a very tight finish between Ollie and Joey. Oh, jeez. You see Joey taking the win. A fantastic breakaway from Ollie there. But that little slow down over the top was probably going to end up costing him. It's tough to see. It's the name of the game. Oh, well, no. So, looking at some of these finishing groups, got a little pair of 2 here with Ian from the Hellhound, Swanee for the Bear Moths. See Swanee just ending it here. And as I say, when you're in a small group doing the work early, dropping a rider can be everything. No one wants to chase on, but Ian's really digging deep here. But he needs to get that wheel early. If he lets Swanee have more than a couple of meters gap, he's just going to power on away. See his 700 watts. Even with Swift favouring watts per kilo heavily, he's not going to be able to gain back on. And see there, Ian's gone. Swanee can just relax down to the finish. That gap's going to be insurmountable, especially with his weight. Looking at Hatch coming solo through here. no one around him. He just relax his way to the finish. Again, average time is going to be important. So it's just going to be a flat pace effort. Imagine that's why we saw him earlier doing big numbers. 4.5s just on the flats because he's just going for that average time now. So we've got a little group back here looking towards the plate. We've got James Scarr for the Orcas, Jay for the Dragons, and Craig for the Alligators. And it's one of those cases, I've said it before, you want to use these little inclines and just break the opposition. With a group of 3 it can be a bit harder because one of them could lead the other back. But again, you want to get behind their wheels, just as we see Jay doing now. Just sit behind and start to punch through here for the breakaway. Looks like these riders of content are just going to sit in. See, there we go. James Scarr going for it. He's definitely got the largest watts, I think, out of this group. But again, he just eased off a little bit early there. He wants to maintain it to get that gap. See, Jay is going to come through onto his wheel. James has eased off. Now, you can still make this work. If you're Jay here, you've got to carry on punching through as he does. Don't give James a chance to get back on your wheel. So James needs to really kick here going into the downhill. Getting back on his wheel, they both do it exactly as you expect. But James, I think, was a little bit late getting back on the power there. He let that gap open up a bit too much. He's not going to benefit any of the draft here. It's a really good move there from Jay from the Dragons to take the win. See Craig coming through. Now going back, looks like Parky's gone for a long burst off this bigger group behind. He's going to take it from them. And they've got Eamon from the Bearmoss, Tom Zervik from the Dingoes, Steve Simons from the Hippos. See Tom going really hard there. Simon's got his wheel. He's still in draft, but the downhill just means once you've got that top speed up, it's very hard for riders to come back through you. And that's where Ollie went wrong earlier. He just eased off a bit too early. If he just kept maintaining that speed, he'd have been okay. He just eased off a bit, and Joey came through with such high speed and took the win. A little group of 2 here with Aben, who's riding for the Hellhounds. It's quite far back, which might hurt the Hellhounds in overall time. Every place is going to count here. He's going to want to make sure at least they're second in the standings on points, so they have a chance of overcoming the Goats, who have most likely taken first on the average time standings. And it's opening up this little bit of a gap. You don't want to let this get too big, so it's at 10 meters. That gives plenty of time for Benedict here just to kick off and never be seen again. So Evans just let it get open, but he's got a very strong sprint. I don't think Benedict's going to have anything to come back here. So he's pushing at 6, but you can see it. He could do the same numbers as Aben from here to the finish, but he's not going to get back on his wheel. Look at the difference in speed. 7 kilometers an hour difference there. See 2 of the Badgers just coming their way to the finish. I'm not sure. I think I'm seeing just not yet. Seeing just normal riders on the course, Zwift being Zwift. But a little Badgers duo into the finish. Done very well to keep this close to the group if they're dropped early. Big credit to them. See, I think Lars from the Dragons quite far back because of that early drop. And it is a very brutal course if you do lose on that first climb. So we've got one last inter-team race with Craig from the Hippos and Bob from the Orcas. The meaty old avatar from Bob suggests he's got a few more raw watts there, but Craig is on his wheel as we come up this climb. No one's going crazy here, just doing enough to get over, leaving it to a sprint finish. Looking at the numbers, I think we've got Bob with about an 8 watt per kilo sprint. 84 kilos, has the raw watts. You'd like to see him go a bit longer, try and go for a long powerful burst. Then Craig for the Hippos, a bit more raw watt per kilo, 13 watt per kilo sprint. So by Bob just sitting in, it's not really playing into his hands. Whether either of them are going to sprint here, they seem to be leaving it very late for an effort. I think Craig's going to trust his watt per kilo to get through, but if Bob's sending it before him, he won't make it in time. It's going to be very tight over the line. Oh, I wouldn't want to call. I suspect Craig will get it, as Zwift tends to give a little bit of the benefit to the momentum. If I want to say it's the back wheel across the line that's the decider. But it's strange tactics there from Bob. At this point, you definitely have Zwift power open. You're looking at who you're riding with, noticing he's got far higher watt per kilo sprint. You've got far more raw watts. You want to be going early there. So it might be a bit ambitious, but we're going to see if we can get hold of some of the results for you on Zwift Power. Okay. So checking out leads, we've only got the first 17 across the line. So it was Joey who took the win, just 0.1 seconds ahead of Ollie. A fantastic effort from Ollie there. And Jason leading his teammate out, very unselfishly, putting a big shift to take third. So that's going to be big points for the Behemoths there. Really good. Then Paul from the Alligators, really good showing from Paul there. Taking fourth, really strong rider, very experienced. Doesn't have the greatest pure numbers, but he more than makes up for it with his experience and kind of, don't know what the right word is for cycling, but gamesmanship. Hendrick coming through in fifth, fantastic result there for the Hellhounds. It's been a great performer all season. Struggled a little bit at the beginning, just hold on and see a very tough league with the Watt Fabric there, with rather A-like numbers. A really good showing for him, and he's just come on every single week, getting better and better. So great to see him coming fifth in the after party here. We've got Pete again, another rider similar to Hendricks, just come on every single week, pushing through, getting stronger and stronger, taking sixth. And really good to see these riders who maybe don't have the biggest pure sprints out there, although, you know, both are still really good numbers, very strong riders, doing well. Then we've got Iron coming through in seventh, always there or thereabouts. Wasn't at his fittest to begin with this season, but has come back strong, fighting, making sure he's not going to be doing another how the race is lost from Eric. And we've got Snowy in eighth, Magnus for the Dingoes in ninth. Just see if we can get a little refresh on this, see if there's any more updates. We've still got that, so as you can see, we've got a big goat contingent there with Marshall, Chris and Rob following through in 10th to 12th. Lots of Behemoths around, with Ollie, Jason, Pete, Swanee and Hatch, but it might be hurt slightly by him being a bit further off the back. See Hatch a bit out of that front group as well. Let's see how that ends up. Not sure why some of the Penby riders aren't coming through. Good result from Magnus for the Dingoes. We're just going to go back to advertising DRS again. Strongly recommend giving it a watch if you can. Some of you may have noticed on the bottom of this, we have the link to the Dirt Dad Fund. It's a fund set up by a very Chris Schwenker, who writes for the Zom Unique, if that's how you pronounce it. I've heard many variations of it, and it's helping out dirt, various people who've had hard times, could do with some support from the community. It's a fantastic charity. They sell great socks, great kits. I'd strongly recommend checking it out if you can. We're going back to the results. We'll have another quick check if anything's come through before we end it. So we've just got a couple more down. See, Eamon from the Hellhounds a bit further back, and Eamon for the Behemoths. So that might cost them with all the goats being in that lead group. Okay, well, thanks very much for joining us. As you've seen, plenty of advertisement for the Dirt Racing Series. I'd strongly recommend checking out, getting involved if you can. It's an absolutely fantastic event, really based on teams. Rather than having one or two riders who can change the result, it gives you the opportunity for the entire team to score and the entire team to contribute. So go give it a look. They've got a Discord, they've got a Facebook page. Give them a check out. It'll be a pleasure to see you back with the Dirty Beast for Season 10 coming to your screens soon.